Welcome back to Morning Express. It's now 12 minutes to 7 and time for us to have that conversation on global partnership and effective development. Joining me to have that conversation is Jackson Kinyanjui, and he is the Director of International Resource Mobilization, a department in the National Treasury. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us. Maybe just to begin from the very basics, when we talk about global mobilization of funds and partnership to make for effective development, what exactly are we talking about?
Gitonga, thank you very much for having me. The first thing I would like to say is that this effort is trying to bring together all actors of development effectiveness. We all know that for many years, developing countries have been receiving aid, and this aid has not had impact that we have always expected to have. So the idea is really to bring all the donors together, the recipient countries, and here I'm talking about countries from Africa, Asia, Latin America, and also the OECD, the providers of aid, and really look at how we manage our development. Can we harmonize our efforts to make sure that we address poverty? You all know that last year, in September, at the UN General Assembly, the international community adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. The objective of that is to make sure that all countries address poverty, that everybody, every person on this earth should be enjoying a minimum standard of living. And where does that come? This is about providing services that citizens require. We are talking about hospitals. We are talking about schools, roads, the whole infrastructure, water. And how do you finance this? You finance this from domestic resources that we collect, which is not really adequate. And from the balance is borrowed from our development partners. And since we have so many development partners, we have to agree on how we finance these programs to ensure, to avoid duplication, to reduce transaction costs, and to make sure that we are focused and aligned to our Vision 2030 in the case of Kenya, because we have a blueprint which defines our aspiration as a country. And how do we finance all those projects? We get resources from those sources that I've just explained.
Okay, you've mentioned that Kenya has a blueprint for that development agenda that we have. How do we synchronize that with the partners that are coming in, the global partners who possibly would also help us with funding?
As a country, we do have forums where we engage with our development partners. In fact, we have what we call the Aid Effectiveness Group, which we meet every month to try and harmonize our engagement with our development partners. We have development partners that finance various sectors. We have what we call the division of labor. We have donors, big donors like the World Bank, the ADB, the European Union, the likes of emerging countries like China, who finance infrastructure. We have the Scandinavians and other donors that finance our social sector. So we try to harmonize and make sure that we harmonize our activities to make sure that there's no duplication in financing. They also align themselves to our blueprint, the Vision 2030, because if we said that for the next 3 years, we would like to do so many kilometers of road, we invite our development partners to come and chat, how do we finance these programs? ADB will take this road, EU will take another road, and the sum total of that, of course, is what we realize.
Okay. Now, one of the concerns that many have had, and that is not just on a local level, but also some of our donors, is when money possibly does not go to the intended use. Is that something that would be addressed in this conference?
We may not go into the details of the implementation of programs. Those are details and issues that we discuss at the country level. But this meeting is really going to bring together, as I had said earlier, the whole issue is elimination of poverty in the world.
Right.
And it has also been realized that it is not only our traditional development partners, but in Busan in 2011, it was appreciated that we need to bring other actors together. So we are bringing in the private sector, the civil society, the philanthropists, the South-South Cooperation. This is the emerging donors partnering with us, and our traditional donors coming together to look at our engagement. We've had several meetings before HLM meetings. We had a meeting in Paris in 2005, which then was just looking at the cost of doing business. And in 2011, that changed in Busan, where now it was felt the traditional approach of financing is not adequate. We need to look out and reach out to other actors to finance our projects and development agenda. And of course, in Addis in 2015, it was also emphasized about domestic resources mobilization. Okay. So we bring all these actors together to take stock of where we are with all those commitments in the past, and then chart the way forward. And also bring in the private sector. Private sector will be having one of the sessions, I think is Plenary 3, where we'll be looking at the potential of unleashing the private sector's effort to finance programs. And you know the government has come up with a law that deals with our partnership with the private sector, the PPP. And so we see them as great partners in our development.
In this development. All right, so what are some of the tangible things that we expect of this conference? Some that we can actually put to task and say, with maybe timelines, and say, we have a timeline to achieve A, B, C, D.
I think one of the things is really to agree on how do we finance our programs. Since the international community has agreed to eliminate poverty, what does that mean? It means that we need to do projects. It means that we are going to mobilize resources. And so there will be a commitment from the international community that we require more resources to address those particular programs. And as I said, there are actors. We are looking at the traditional development partners. We have the likes of China, who are the emerging donors. We have the private sector. We have the civil society also, who receive resources from our development partners. So we need to harmonize and coordinate our effort to make sure that we create synergy that will pull us in one direction. So one of the outcomes of the meeting is really what we call the Nairobi Outcome Document, which has stipulated some aspirations as international community, how we engage, taking stock, engaging with our development partners. We also expect to discuss about the whole issue of women, empowering women and youth, a topic that actually has been sponsored by Kenya because of what we view as the great potential of unleashing the potential contribution of the youth and women in this country. And that will be Plenary 4.
Okay. Now, is this in line with the meeting that you're having and the conference that you're having? Is it in line with Vision 2030? Is it aligned to that?
Exactly, Mr. Gitonga. You know, each country must have a blueprint,
right,
which defines the aspirations of Kenyans. We have defined and charted our development path, which is documented in the Vision 2030. We would like to have Kenyans enjoy a higher standard of living. This document foresaw us emerging from low income to middle income country by improving the health care of our people, the water sector, education. We have free primary education. We're going to secondary education. A lot of resources have been put in. Energy sector. In the last 5 years, we were generating about 1,200 megawatts. Today, we have about 2,300 megawatts of power, and that's why we are able to roll out the last mile, and where Kenyans are now starting to enjoy more and more connections of power.
All right. Now, the other question that many Kenyans would like to know and has been on the forefront for some time now is the amount of money that Kenya is borrowing and how much in debt we are. Is that going to be addressed? Is that something that is likely to come up?
Again, that may, of course, come as a general policy issue or discussions, but in terms of specifics to the country, that may not come up. But of course, there's a general view that countries should be able to manage their debt. And what I can assure you is that for us as a country, we have managed this debt issue for a long time. We have a debt strategy that defines how we are going to borrow. And we are very clear that we would like to borrow funds that we are able to generate money to pay back the debt. Let me also assure Kenyans that there's no country that is going to develop without debt. Even the US, even all the developed countries, you've got to borrow. Unless you shut down about borrowing, and then you say no more roads, no more water, no more schools.
The issue here would be over borrowing. Borrowing may be okay, and especially when it goes towards what it is supposed to be. The issue here might be that we may have borrowed, but sometimes the question remains as to whether the money has been utilized for what it was borrowed for.
Well, of course, that's a different issue. But in terms of borrowing, we've been very careful as a government, because borrowing, the sustainability of borrowing is based on our growth, on our GDP growth rate. And our share of debt is less than 50%, which means we're still sustainable. If you look at countries like the US and the rest, they're in the order of 70, 80%. So what we need to do is to make sure that we borrow this money, we do our roads, open up our industries in the rural areas, provide services to Kenyans, and make sure that we have returns on this investment. And this global partnership is all about that. It's really about ensuring that the money that we get as official development assistance is really going into the right investment and giving returns to Kenyans.
All right. Maybe finally, just the dates for the conference, and is it open to everyone, or is that just a discussion at that high level? Invite only, maybe?
Yes, thank you very much. This meeting is going to attract 161 countries around the world, and each country has been invited to nominate delegations. They need to be accredited. They need to be registered. So each country is sending in their delegations. We have an online registration website. And that is ongoing, and we do expect that this meeting is going to be very successful. The meeting will be opened by His Excellency the President and closed by him. And we expect a very high turnout of this meeting.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson Kinyanjui, the Director of International Resource Mobilization Department in the National Treasury. Thank you very much for highlighting that for us. Well, do stay with us right here on Morning Express. We'd like to take a short break. When we come back, it'll be time for us to look at our person of interest. And our person of interest this morning is none other than Ekuru Aukot. And of course, the question that we're running so far on our Twitter poll, and I'd like to hear from you what your comments are, is would you vote for Ekuru Aukot as your next president? Of course, maybe for some of us, it'll be clearer after the interview. Do stay with us. Person of interest coming up shortly.